I want to talk about something that can change the way you live your life, staying in your own lane. Have you ever been driving on the highway and suddenly found yourself distracted by what someone else is doing? Maybe they're speeding past you, or they seem to have a smoother ride, and you start thinking, why am I not where they are? But the moment you take your eyes off your own lane, you become vulnerable, you drift, you lose focus, and worst of all, you might crash. The same thing happens in life. We get caught up watching what others are doing, who's ahead, who's achieving what, and we start feeling like we're not enough. But let me remind you today, God has a unique plan for your life, and you don't need to compete with anyone else to fulfill it. The Bible tells us in Hebrews 12:1 to run with endurance the race that is set before us. Not someone else's race, not the race we wish we had, but the one God designed for us. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, staying in your own lane takes discipline. It takes faith. It means trusting that God's plan for you is good, even when it feels like others are moving ahead faster. So today, I encourage you, stop comparing yourself to others. Focus on what God has placed in front of you. Keep moving forward, even if it's just one step at a time. Because when you stay in your own lane, you will find peace, joy, and the freedom to be exactly who God created you to be. Amen? Amen? Life is not a competition with others about becoming the best version of yourself. So many times we find ourselves looking at what other people are doing, how fast they are moving, how much they are achieving, and we start to wonder, am I falling behind? Why is their life working out so perfectly while mine feels like a struggle? But here's the truth. You are not called to run someone else's race. God has a specific path for your life. And no matter how tempting it is to look at someone else's progress, their journey is not yours. You are equipped for your own race. And the moment you step outside of that, you step into frustration, insecurity, and disappointment. Think about a professional runner in a race. Have you ever seen an athlete looking at the person next to them while running? No. Because the moment they take their eyes off their lane, they slow down, they lose focus. They might even trip. The same happens in life when you are constantly looking around, comparing your speed, your success, or your journey to someone else's. You risk getting distracted from what God has called you to do. We live in a world that thrives on competition. Social media has made it easier than ever to compare our lives to others. You scroll through your phone, and it seems like everyone is doing better than you, getting promotions, traveling, getting married, starting businesses, achieving their dreams. And before you know it, you start feeling like you are not enough. But let me remind you, God did not call you to be them. He called you to be you. Your job is not to measure your success based on what someone else is doing. Your job is to stay faithful to what God has placed in front of you. Look at David in the Bible. When he was just a shepherd boy, tending sheep in the fields, he wasn't worried about what his brothers were doing. He wasn't chasing after status or attention. He was simply doing what God had given him to do. And while no one saw him, God saw him. While people overlooked him, God was preparing him. David didn't have to strive for position. God brought him to the throne at the right time. The same goes for you. God sees you. He knows where you are. He knows what you need, and he knows exactly when to promote you. You don't have to push, stress, or manipulate things to make them happen. If you stay in your lane and run your race with faithfulness, in due time you will step into everything that God has for you. So stop looking at what someone else is doing. Stop worrying about who is ahead or who seems more successful. Focus on your race. Stay committed to your own journey. Because at the end of the day, you are not in competition with anyone. You are only called to be the best version of who God created you to be. And when you do that, you will find peace. You will find fulfillment. You will realize that your race, your path, your journey is beautiful because it is uniquely yours. The moment you start comparing your journey to someone else's, you invite frustration, doubt, and distraction into your life. Comparison is a thief. It sneaks in quietly. And before you know it, it has stolen your peace, your joy, and your confidence. Instead of appreciating where you are and how far you've come, you start feeling like you're not doing enough, not achieving enough, not being enough. Think about this. You could be having a great day, feeling content and grateful. And then suddenly you see someone else succeeding in an area where you're struggling. Maybe they just bought a new house, got a promotion, or reached a goal you've been praying for. And just like that, your joy fades. What changed? Nothing about your own situation, only your perspective. Instead of being thankful for what you have, you start feeling dissatisfied because you're looking at someone else's blessings instead of your own. Comparison is a dangerous game because it's never fair. We compare our behind-the-scenes struggles to someone else's highlight reel. We see their success, but we don't see their sacrifices. We see their blessings, but we don't see their battles. The truth is, everyone has their own challenges, but when you compare, you only see what's on the surface. That's why it's so important to keep your eyes on your own journey and trust that God is working things out for you in His perfect timing. In John 21, after Jesus had risen from the dead, He had a conversation with Peter about his future. Jesus told Peter what was ahead for him. But instead of focusing on his own calling, Peter turned and looked at John and asked, "Lord, what about him?" And Jesus responded, "If I want him to remain until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me." That's a powerful reminder for all of us. In other words, Jesus was saying, stop worrying about someone else's story and focus on your own. What God is doing in someone else's life has nothing to do with what He is doing in yours. Their success does not take away from what God has planned for you. Just because someone else is moving ahead faster does not mean you are behind. God's plan for your life is unique and His timing is perfect. One of the biggest reasons comparison steals our joy is because it shifts our focus from gratitude to envy. Instead of appreciating what we have, we start resenting what we don't. But gratitude is the antidote to comparison. When you start thanking God for what He has done in your life, you stop feeling jealous of what He is doing in someone else's. Every time you feel comparison creeping in, remind yourself, I am on my own path. I have my own blessings. God has a plan just for me. Instead of looking at others and feeling like you're missing out, start celebrating them. Be happy when others succeed. When you do that, you show God that you trust Him with your own journey. You show Him that you are content, that you are faithful, and that you are ready for all the good things He has in store for you. Don't let comparison steal your joy. Stay focused, stay grateful, and trust that everything God has for you will come at exactly the right time. Just like no two fingerprints are the same, your calling is unique. God has designed you with a specific purpose, a path that no one else can walk but you. The problem is, too many people spend their lives trying to fit into someone else's calling, comparing their journey to others and chasing after things that were never meant for them. But when you try to live someone else's life, you miss out on the blessings that were meant specifically for you. We live in a world that constantly tells us to measure our worth based on achievement, status, or how we compare to others. It's easy to look at someone else and think, maybe I should be doing what they're doing. Maybe I need to change myself to fit in. Maybe I'm not good enough the way I am. But God didn't create you to be a copy of someone else. He created you to be original, to walk a path that is entirely your own. Think about Moses. When God called him to lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses didn't feel qualified. He looked at his own weaknesses, his inability to speak well, his past mistakes, and he doubted himself. But God didn't call Moses because he was perfect. He called him because he was chosen. Moses was the one God had equipped for that specific mission, and no one else could take his place. The same is true for you. Whatever God has planned for your life, He has already given you everything you need to fulfill it. You don't have to be like someone else. And you don't have to compare your journey to theirs. Your calling is yours alone, and no one else can do what you were created to do. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for them. They chase careers, relationships, or lifestyles that look good on the outside, but leave them feeling empty because they were never meant for that path. But true peace and fulfillment come when you embrace who you are and trust that God's plan for your life is better than anything you could create for yourself. When David was just a young shepherd boy, no one expected him to become a king. In fact, when the prophet Samuel came to anoint the next king of Israel, David wasn't even considered at first. His own father didn't see his potential. but God did. And when the time came for David to fight Goliath, Saul tried to give him his own armor to wear. It was big, heavy, and completely wrong for David. If David had tried to fight in Saul's armor, he would have failed. Instead, he chose to go into battle with what he knew, a slingshot and stones, and with God on his side, that was all he needed to win. That's a lesson for all of us. You don't need to wear someone else's armor. You don't need to live someone else's story. You don't need to try to be anything other than who God created you to be. When you embrace your calling, when you stop trying to fit into a path that wasn't meant for you, you will find success, joy, and purpose in a way you never imagined. So stop questioning whether you're enough. Stop looking at others and wondering if their path is better than yours. Trust that God made you exactly the way you are for a reason, with your gifts, your personality, your experiences, and even your struggles. Every piece of your journey is part of His plan. Stay in your own lane, follow His lead, and watch how He brings everything together for your good. Success isn't about how fast you go, it's about staying committed. Too often we get discouraged when things don't happen as quickly as we'd like. We start something with excitement, full of faith. But when we don't see immediate results, we begin to question, is this even working? Am I wasting my time? Should I just give up? But the key to success in life isn't speed, it's faithfulness, staying focused, staying steady, and trusting that God is working even when we don't see it. Think about a farmer. He plants seeds in the ground, waters them, and takes care of them. But he doesn't dig them up every day to check if they're growing. He trusts the process. He knows that just because he can't see the roots forming beneath the soil doesn't mean nothing is happening. Growth takes time. The same is true for your journey. Just because you don't see immediate results doesn't mean you're not making progress. Too many people quit right before their breakthrough. They get frustrated, impatient, and decide to give up when in reality they were closer than they realized. That's why staying faithful is so important. You don't need to rush, you don't need to panic, and you don't need to compare your progress to someone else's. You just need to keep moving forward one step at a time. The Bible tells us in Galatians 6:9, let us not grow weary in doing good. For at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Did you catch that? At the proper time. Not our time, not when we think it should happen, but when God knows it's right. He sees the whole picture. He knows what we need. And when we need it, our job is to keep going, keep trusting, and keep being faithful. Look at Noah. God told him to build an ark because a flood was coming. But the flood didn't come immediately. Days passed, months passed, years passed. Can you imagine what people must have thought? Noah, what are you doing? There's no rain. You're wasting your time. But Noah didn't let doubt stop him. He didn't quit just because it was taking longer than expected. He stayed faithful. And when the time was right, everything God had promised came to pass. The same applies to your life. Maybe you've been praying for something, working hard, staying committed, but you don't see the results yet. Don't give up. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean God isn't working. Some of the greatest things take time. A bamboo tree takes about 5 years before you see any growth above the soil. For years, nothing seems to be happening. But during that time, the roots are growing deep, getting strong, preparing for what's ahead. Then, in just a few weeks, it suddenly shoots up and grows rapidly. That's what happens when you stay faithful. Your breakthrough may not come overnight, but when it does, it will be more than you ever imagined. So if you're feeling discouraged today, if you're tempted to give up, I encourage you to keep going. Stay faithful. Stay focused. Keep trusting that God's timing is perfect. Your hard work, your prayers, your faithfulness, they are not wasted. You are not forgotten. You are being prepared for something greater than you can see right now. God never wastes faithfulness. When you keep moving forward, even when it's hard, even when you don't understand, you will step into the blessings that He has already planned for you. Stay steady, keep trusting, and watch what happens when God's perfect timing unfolds.